The Night Visitor. When Essie first moved into her new home, she believed it would mark a fresh start in her life. Since childhood, she had dreamed of living away from the chaos of big cities in a quiet place. The apartment was small but warm. After arranging her furniture, she looked out the window and saw the trees in front of the building, their branches trembling under the pale glow of the street lamp. "This is it," she whispered to herself, "the peace I've been looking for." Yet the human mind, once accustomed to peace, begins to notice even the smallest noises as strange. During her first nights, she had trouble sleeping. Sometimes it was the sound of the radiator expanding. Sometimes the footsteps of the upstairs neighbor that unsettled her. But what she heard on the third night was different. The faint tapping that broke the silence seemed to come directly from her door. She checked her phone. 3:02 a.m. Slowly, she got up and padded barefoot to the door. Peering through the peephole, she saw no one, and yet she felt as if a shadow shifted in the hallway, just beyond her field of vision. She waited for several minutes, but nothing happened. She went back to bed, unable to sleep until morning. The next day, she tried to forget about the incident. She went to work, texted her friends, and continued her routine. But as night approached, an unexplainable anxiety weighed on her chest. It was as if the walls of her home were closing in, and the darkness grew thicker each passing day. Even with the curtain shut, she felt eyes watching her from outside. One night, drifting between sleep and wakefulness, she noticed her bedroom door was slightly ajar, yet she was certain she had closed it before bed. Her heart began to race. She lay still in her bed, frozen. Then came the sound, the rhythm of breathing, but it wasn't hers. Heavy, muffled, raspy breathing. It felt as though someone stood silently in the corner of her room. She didn't dare turn on the light. Instead, she closed her eyes tightly and lay still for hours. In the morning, the door was open again, but the room was empty. "Maybe I was dreaming," she whispered to herself, but the greasy fingerprints on the doorknob screamed that it had been no dream. Her neighbors in the building were strange as well. When she first moved in, no one came to knock on her door. No welcome visits, no curious glances. It was as if they didn't want to acknowledge her existence. When she met them in the hallway, their faces carried a forced smile. Their lips muttered a brief greeting, but in their eyes was a deep, unshakable fear. One day she encountered an elderly woman in the elevator. The woman spoke while staring at the floor. "If you hear noises at night, don't open the door," she whispered. Issei froze. "What do you mean?" she asked, but the woman gave no reply. The moment the elevator doors opened, she hurried away. Those words etched themselves into Issa's mind. Don't open the door. Ichi had spent the last few nights almost entirely awake. Whenever she tried to sleep, faint whispers from the depths of her mind disrupted the rhythm of her heartbeat. Her home no longer felt like a safe refuge. Every step she took made the walls seem narrower, the corners darker. She felt someone watching her from behind the curtains, and when the silent calls to her phone came, the sensation became unbearable. One night, she rose from her bed and walked toward the living room. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the furniture. At that moment, she saw movement in the corner of the room. Her eyes widened. Her breath caught. The shadow seemed alive, taking one step closer. But when she switched on the light, there was nothing, only silence and her own trembling breath. At that moment, a memory from her childhood surfaced. When she was little, a figure used to peer through her window in the village house. It would press its breath against the glass and whisper silently. Her family claimed it was just a nightmare, but Ise knew it had been real. Now, the figure had returned after all these years, demanding a confrontation. Messages began arriving on her phone. At first they were short and cryptic. Watching. Wake up. Do you remember me? They arrived precisely at 3:07 a.m. Each time, her heart raced as she answered, only to find silence. The faint breathing or whispering disappeared as soon as she hung up. Her neighbors had become stranger too. In the elevator, in the stairwell, whenever she made eye contact, there was a brief silence before they walked away with a forced smile. It was as if the building itself was filled with a secret that emerged at night. One night, gathering all her courage, Isi opened the door. No one was outside, but something had been left there. An old, small photograph. It showed her as a child. There were red stains on the image, and though there were no words, the message was clear. Something from her past was still watching. From that moment, Ise felt compelled to stay fully awake at night. Every shadow, every sound, every rustle of the wind was a threat. Her eyes constantly scanned the room, her ears attuned to silence. The fear inside her had transformed into physical pain. Her heart raced, her hands shook. One morning, an elderly neighbor approached her and whispered, "Don't open the door. You don't know who's waiting." Isi's face turned pale. Confusion and fear swirled inside her. She now understood that she was not alone. And it was not just a physical person, but an unknown entity pursuing her. That night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., her door opened by itself. Ichi stood in the center of the room facing a dark figure. She couldn't see its face, only its presence was there, silently waiting. "This time you won't hide," an ominous voice said. Isi wanted to scream, but no sound came out. As the figure advanced, all the lights in the apartment went out, and silence engulfed everything. Ise had begun to stay fully awake at night. Her eyes scanned the darkness, her ears listened to the silence. Every tap of a sound made her heart race. Every shadow carried a threat. When her phone rang again at 3:07 a.m., she answered without hesitation. But this time it wasn't just silence. There were whispers, as if a voice was coming directly to her ear. "Do you remember me?" Isi's breath caught. The voice eerily resembled the figure she had glimpsed through her childhood window. Years later, it had found her again. That figure was not merely a shadow. It was an entity from her past. At 3:33 a.m., her door opened by itself. Ishi recoiled in fear. Before her stood a dark figure, human in silhouette but faceless. "This time you won't hide," said the ominous voice. Ishi tried to scream, but no sound emerged. The figure advanced silently, and a gust of wind swept through the apartment. Curtains rustled, lights flickered, and faint shadows moved across the walls. Her mind flashed back to childhood. The window in the village house, the figure breathing on the glass, the nights her family dismissed as dreams. It had all come together. She realized at that moment that the figure hadn't come only to frighten her. It had come to make her remember. Repressed fears, long-forgotten memories, now stood before her. Tears welled in her eyes, but fear was stronger. The figure stood beside her, watching. Then silence fell. The figure retreated from her room, leaving behind a message, an old photograph. It showed Ise as a child. On the back, written in red, was a single sentence: "I will return tonight." Ise stared at the photo, her blood running cold. She understood now. This was only the beginning. The figure's presence was inevitable. Every night, every shadow, every creak was a warning, and those warnings would never end. Taking a deep breath, Ise tried to steady herself, but she knew, in her mind as well as in the world, this dark entity would remain. The night was no longer safe. Nowhere was safe.